no matter how anybody reacts to me, whether it's positive or a negative, they're not teaching me anything new about me. They're really just showing me who they are as people and how much knowledge they and how much exposure or experience they have with stuttering.
Welcome to Some Stutter Law, Newfoundland and Labrador's first podcast about living with communication disorders. It is a production of the Communication Collaborative. My name is Greg O'Grady. I am a person who stutters and your host. Some Stutter Law aims to rebuild confidence and hope for people who live with communication differences by dismantling myths, stigmas, stereotypes, and barriers. For more information about the Communication Collaborative or this podcast, you can find us at somestutterlaw.ca. If you only get one thing from this podcast, we hope it's this. It's okay to stutter and it's okay to communicate differently. It's not how we communicate that's important, it's the message that's important. Today, Some Stutter Law welcomes Kim Block. Kim, on behalf of Some Stutter Law, as a person who stutters and a self-published author, thank you for starting and continuing the conversation about stuttering.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kim. Now, just a little bit about Kim Block. Kim is currently a full-time student at Simon Fraser University, completing a second degree, this time in criminology with a certificate in social justice. Kim already has a BA in human resources, human systems, and family life education, with a certificate in human resource management, and a diploma as a developmental service worker. She is also a person who stutters and has been involved in the stuttering community for over 20 years as an advocate. Thank you very much, Kim. Uh, as an advocate, presenter, writer, keynote speaker. Uh, also as president of BCAPS, support group facilitator, guest lecturer, author of 6 books, and founder of the Facebook group for parents and family members of children who stutters. My first question to you, Kim, is, how do you get the time to write books? Seriously.
That's a good question.
Oh.
That's a good question. You know, when people read my bio, I think, how in the world did I do all that? But it was over a 20-year period. So,
Okay.
but I do admit that I am someone who cannot sit still. And when I'm passionate about something, I do become razor focused on it, and I do get stuff done.
Okay, well, it's obvious you do. Kim's husband is also a member of the stuttering community, and they have 2 teenage children. Kim is also fluent in American Sign Language and has worked and volunteered in the deaf community for over 20 years. Some of Kim's children's books include Adventures of Stuttering Superhero Adventure Number 1, Interruptus, Why Do I Stutter, a drawing book, and her newest release, Adventures of the Stuttering Superhero Adventure Number 2. And also, Melissa Meets Her Stanley. Con- Congratulations, Kim, on the success of your book series. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
So
Thank you very
Kim,
much.
before we start, would you be able to share a little bit about your history as a person who stutters?
Sure. I've been stuttering since all I know. and I started speech therapy when I was 4 years old. My mother would bring me to the hospital, and she would tell the speech therapist what letters I had a hard time saying. And I would go into this gray room with a table and two chairs. There was nothing on the walls. And my mother would be on the other side of a two-way mirror. And I would have a flashcards, and I would literally sit there for I don't even know how long. And it would just be, I would have to say what the words were. And she would have like a roll for R's and a roll for S's and a roll for M's. And that was my speech therapy. Um, I learned how to hide it. That was my main goal as a small kid. I knew when I stuttered, it caused my parents a lot of stress. I could see the looks on their faces. I got a lot of negative feedback for it. So if I thought I was going to stutter, I didn't speak. And I had all the tricks of the trade that we all do on to avoid stuttering. Um, by the time I got to grade 8, I had a very hard time hiding it, and I got teased a lot for it. Um, I became so anxious every time just to open up my mouth that by the time I got to high school in grade 9, I really couldn't talk. And the school panicked, and they got me a speech therapist. And at that time, people are going to be like, wow, that's a lot of speech therapy. 3 times a week for 45 minutes, I had access to a speech therapist. And she was wonderful. Like, by the time I got to her, she had a teenager who didn't want to do anything that she wanted me to be doing. And what she was trying to convince me to do was to do voluntary stuttering. And I was assessed at a severe level with my stuttering. And the idea of stuttering on purpose was just, I refused. But things just got so bad she had built up a trusting relationship with me that I said, I don't have any other choice. Like I'm at the end of my rope here. So I agreed to try the voluntary stuttering and as a speech technique, and it worked very well for me. And speech therapy was successful up to the point that I could learn to hide it again. So I told everybody I was cured, speech therapy worked, I no longer stutter. And then I lived my whole life in fear of stuttering. So I would go to bed every night at 8 o'clock because I was so exhausted from the amount of mental gymnastics that I had to do during the day to avoid stuttering. And I was up at like 5 o'clock in the morning because I had figured that when I exercise in the morning, I stutter less. So I had mastered this life where everything was around not stuttering. And it was a horrible way to live. And by the time I got to college, again, my stuttering, I couldn't hide it anymore. It was, again, coming to a point where I just couldn't control it. So I went to the library looking for a speech therapy book. And there were no such books, but I found the book, A Life Bound Up in Words by Marty Cheser. And I was so ashamed to hold that book while standing in the library that I hid it. And to put the book down and to have the library, that book scanned, like that's how much I hated stuttering. And I read that book in 3 days, and it changed the whole course of my life. I cried during that book. I laughed during that book. And at the back of the book was all of the addresses for stuttering organizations. And I never knew of any stuttering organizations. And I contacted, at that time, it was called the Canadian Association of People Who Stutter. And I realized I reached the point where I needed to be around other people who stutter or talk to someone who stutters, because I just felt so alone. And I really felt like I was the only person in the world experiencing the pain that I was feeling. And I reached out to the Canadian Association of People Who Stutter, and the man who was in charge of it all at that time was named David Hallock, and he said, "Well, we do a newsletter that comes out every 3 or 4 months. I can put a little ad for a pen pal in there, but in the meantime, if you want, we can start emailing back and forth." So that's what we did. And we've been married for almost 20 years now and have
Mm.
two children. So
Mm.
that's how we met. And he's also a person who stutters and who has been very active in the stuttering community. We ended up moving in together, and I went to university in Montreal. And I went to my first stuttering conference at the NSA, where there was like 500 people there, and it blew my mind. And I was watching all these other people with like PhDs who were married and had families. I thought these people seem so happy. And I'm like, I want to be happy too. And when I started university, my goal was to no longer hide. I didn't want to hide anymore. I was done. I was willing to feel uncomfortable and to face all of the anxiety and the fear of failure and the fear of everything, and just live my life as a person who stutters and be open about it. And that journey was like such an intense journey. But I graduated my program with honors and an award for being the most outstanding student. And that program was like a coming out program for me, because it was such a highly participatory program. So when you walked into a classroom for this course, you walked into a huge room that was empty with nothing but chairs that would move around, because we were working in teams the whole time. So I was talking all the time, and there were icebreakers, and everything was like oral presentations. And I've got a couple good stories, but it was like, it was either sink or swim.
Mm.
You're either going to participate or not and fail. So that was my whole journey, and how I transitioned to just acceptance, and learning that stuttering is absolutely okay, and it's even better than okay.
Mm. Well, Kim, that is quite the story, and con- congratulations, Kim. Kim,
Thank you.
just to backtrack a little bit, when you said that, when you mentioned that you had taken speech therapy, but it also helped you to hide your stutter. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I would avoid words all of the time, so I was always weaving in and out of sentences. I would pretend that I was sick, that I couldn't participate in class, or I would if there was a line of something, so say my friends and I were going to see a movie, I would make sure that I was the last person in the line, so I didn't have to say the title of the movie. And I used a lot of like gestures sometimes if I had to ask for things like two of something, or yeah, I just had a lot of tricks, or I would just not talk, or I would just nod, or I would say same here, or I would order whatever the person beside me was eating because I didn't want to pick what was on the menu. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff.
Mm,
I
mm,
really felt like I was watching my life happen, that I wasn't participating in it.
mm. So Kim, would you classify yourself now as 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 a confident over person who stutters? Confident
Yes,
person who stutters. You know?
yes, most definitely. And it was quite the journey to get there. Like I remember one of my I would have goals. So one of the things I did was I went to Toastmasters. But I remember reading books about stuttering on in the subway system in Montreal, or wearing a shirt that had the word stutter on it. And I felt completely naked. Like when I first did that, if someone said to me, would you rather wear a shirt that has the word stutter on it on a bus, or would you rather walk on naked? I would have been like, I'm walking on naked.
Yeah.
But just those little steps of like, you know, like making it public, um, really helped. And then the fact that I was in university and classes with like 80 people, and I was forced to participate in these very verbally participatory games and like teamwork. Um, you know, I was always nervous. I was always fearful of what people would say and how they would respond to me. Um, but I learned some really important lessons along that journey.
Mm. So, Kim, do you still, suffer from, suffer from the anxiety which, which is associated with, with stuttering? Like in terms, like, do you get anxious when you have to make a phone call or speak to people? How do you handle your anxiety?
So, phone calls used to be one of the most stressful things that I always experienced. It would take me like a day to make a phone call. And the 20 minutes leading up to making that phone call, I'd be pacing. I'd have to get myself all pumped up to make that phone call. And it would be such a short phone call. And then it was done. I would think about it for 2 or 3 days. Now, when I make phone calls, I can say I have zero anxiety. I do experience some anxiety when it comes to speaking, when I'm new in front of a group, because I never really know what someone is going to say or how they're going to respond. But on a scale of like zero, no anxiety, 100, I'm walking out of the room, I would say my anxiety is like a 5, and then it goes away fast. I'm really so comfortable with stuttering that, and I almost like, I feel like, so what I tell other people is that when people who stutter are open about their stuttering, and when we are comfortable and confident in ourselves, we are teaching other people that just diversity is absolutely okay, and expected, and a normal part of society. And I truly believe that as people who stutter, when we are open with it, we are making the world a better place. And not just for people who stutter, but for everybody and anybody who has a disability or feels odd or is different. Trying to fit yourself into society's cookie cutter, I don't think is helpful to anyone, including our society. So I consider it a privilege and an honor to have an opportunity to represent other people who stutter. And I take every opportunity that I can to speak and be heard and participate.
Mm. Well, Kim, you are definitely a role model for us. Definitely, you know.
Thank you. I've had a lot of wonderful role models, and I've met a lot of wonderful people in the stuttering community. And I can tell you 100%, I would not have the view, I would not have the opinions I have, I would not have the life that I have and the sense of peace if it was not for all those other people who stutter.
Hmm. So Kim, how did you deal with the below the surface, the emotional component of stuttering? Because that's a huge area of stuttering. How how did you address these issues that we all struggle with?
Yeah, you know what? For me, it was really connecting with other people who stutter and not feeling alone. When I was in high school and I was just all of my feelings and my thoughts, I didn't have anyone to to express those to. I didn't. I couldn't get feedback or input or insight into how I was thinking or feeling. And I remember being at the NSA conference, and a lawyer sat down beside me in the lobby. We were all kind of talking, and he said to me, he goes, I go to bed every night at 8 o'clock because I'm so tired from all of the work I do to avoid stuttering. I mean, I almost fell off my chair. You could have picked me up off the floor. This whole time, all these years, I had felt so alone and ashamed. And this whole entire time, here was this man in Florida who was going to bed at 8 o'clock for the exact same reasons that I was. And I got to look at this person and say, wow, me too. And those feelings of me too are worth $1 million. People with rare diseases will fly all over the world so that they can be in front of somebody who either looks or sounds or feels or experiences life exactly the same way that they do. So my healing journey was being involved in the stuttering community, and it was advocating, and it was taking on leadership roles and doing workshops and participating in conferences and facilitating support groups. And to me, if anybody is like, how do I deal with my emotions? My first thing is you need to get yourself to a support group. You need to reach out to others. There's a lot of stuff that's happening online. You need to listen to podcasts and listen to everybody's sharing their experience. And it becomes an, a normalized, and it becomes okay. And when you think about it, so there's like 1% of people in the world who's a stutter all over the country, like all over the world. It would be very bizarre if there was a country that didn't have anybody who stuttered. Like, we would wonder what is wrong with that country. And stuttering is such a normal part of the population. Like, why are we hiding? Why are we so ashamed? And it's, we are all socialized. And ableism is such an ingrained, socialized part of norms and a society. But those are thoughts, those are perceptions, and those can all change. We're not talking about the laws of gravity. So I believe that every person, that if you can make the best life that you can and focus on yourself, you're actually doing the stuttering community some good.
Wonderful, Kim. Wonderful, Kim. So what is what are your thoughts now about speech therapy? Because like you're so comfortable and confident with being an overt person who stutters. So what's your thoughts about speech therapy?
I mean, speech therapy for me is not something that I'm interested in right now. I did go back as an adult in my early 20s. I don't think speech therapy is neither bad or good. It depends on what the person wants. And you know if someone wants to invest their time into speech therapy, I say sure. Why not? The only thought that I would want to ponder about is, what is your motivation for speech therapy? Are you going because you think speech therapy is going to make life easier for you, that it'll be easier for you to communicate, or you want more control over your speech? Or are you going because you're afraid you're not going to find the job that, or you're not going to get the job that you want, or you're not going to, or no one is going to love you, or are you going to please other people? If you enter speech therapy in a place of fear, I would hope that during that transition, that you do find a balance. Um, but I mean, I don't think speech therapy is bad, and I think people who who stutter have every right to access services that they think are going to benefit them.
Okay, okay. Kim, in one of your interviews, you said that that stuttering is a topic that many people don't talk about, and that many speech language pathologists are even uncomfortable talking about. Would you be able to elaborate on that?
Sure. Yeah, I think, or what I've heard, and what other people have told me who are SLPs. I've been invited to speak at UBC on an annual basis for a few years now, to the students who are in the speech language pathology program. And people who are in that field, a lot of them will admit that stuttering is not an area that they are most comfortable with. And a lot of them also wonder or ponder, if speech therapy is required to go on for so long, that there's a lot of professional con- confusion about what is the best route to be taking, and is speech therapy something that should be offered in schools, and the chronic underfunding that schools are in, and the lack of number of SLPs that are in schools right now makes it very challenging. But yeah, and in Canada, we don't really have a a specialization like what they do in the UK and in the States. Um, so and a lot of SLPs aren't really involved in the stuttering community. There are some fabulous ones who are. Like there are some great SLPs out there who who are. So as a consumer, we really need to do our due diligence and make sure we find someone who is a really good fit.
Mm. Kim, I've spoken to a lot of SLPs and like wannabe SLPs, but one of the challenging areas that that a number of SLPs, let's say students, will not go into will not go into treating stutterers because of the emotional component. So
Yes.
what about your thoughts about that?
Yeah, they certainly feel the weight of re, re, responsibility, and in an area that they don't feel really comfortable in unless they are a person who stutters as well. Um, and I can totally understand that because their training, like they get one class in stuttering. And as much as you can try and teach the emotional components of that, as people who stutter, we have a lot in common, but we are also very different. And our experiences throughout our childhood and some of the stories that people come up with, not every client that they're going to see is going to be the same. Their fear level is going to be different. Their anxiety level is going to be different. And, for someone who doesn't have any personal experience, and there's not a lot of structural um, scientific studies done on the emotional parts. Like there's starting stuff to come out. I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of new stuff that's starting to come out, but it's still new.
Hmm.
And they're still doing a lot of studies on how we think and feel about things. So it is very uncharted waters.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Kim, now about your books. So,
Hmm.
Kim, what do what made you decide to write children's books? You know.
So I was a secretary at a school, and I was working at the deaf school for the BC School for the Deaf, and it is also a school that shares a building space with a hearing school. And I we were doing a fire alarm practice, and I was the person that the kids had to come up and tell if all of the students in their class were all here. And one of the kids that came up running came up to me and said, "All here," and she was stuttering. And I just was like, "Oh, that's interesting." Thought to myself. And then a few weeks later, the school was having a literacy program where people from the outside community were coming in to read books, and her class didn't have a volunteer. So I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I read a kid's book about stuttering to the class? So I went to the school librarian and I said, "Do you have any books where there's a character who stutters or anything?" She was like, "Nope, I have nothing like that." And so I read the book. oh geez, by Todd Parr. It's okay to be as different. And I was very open with my stuttering to the class, and it led on to a great conversation. And I went home that night and I took my dog for a walk and I wrote the book, my first book, Interruptitis, in my head when I was taking my dog for a walk. And I came home and I started to write that down. And I started to write stories for her. And I gave them to her mom, and she was just like, Kim, these are fabulous. You need to do something with this. So I started to send out my stuff out to publishers, and they loved my work, but they said that I wasn't for the mass, that my stories were for too specific of a population. Sorry, I'm just hearing a lawnmower outside. Do you need me to close my
Oh
window?
no, I'm fine with it, Kim.
Okay. um, so I knew I was going to have to self publish. So I found a publishing company out on Vancouver Island, and I sent them my work, and they said they loved it and that they would agree to help me. So I went with them, and I did my first book with them, and then I went on my own and did it independently after that. So my books sell on Amazon, and my first book was came out in 2016, and it's been selling on Prime for 5 years. So there's been enough of a demand that they've been selling on Prime, which has been great. Very recently, I've been shifting my focus onto other projects. I'm going to leave the books up for sale on Amazon, but I'm not actively doing anything to promote them. But they're just there. But when my book first came out 5 years ago, there weren't that many books out there for kids. And in the last 2 or 3 years, it's been really impressive how many more books there are now for kids on stuttering. So
Mm.
that's cool. Yeah.
Kim, would you explain to our listening audience the title of the Adventures of the Stuttering Superhero Adventure Number One, Interruptitis? Do you want to explain what that means?
Sure.
Interruptitis for
So
layperson.
the whole yeah. So for the whole story is there's a girl named Melissa, and she's in grade 2, and she's very bold, and she says what she wants to say, and she's playing with her friends, but she's got this little kid in her class who keeps guessing her words. So I want to play, and he says hula hoops, no, and he keeps guessing the wrong words, and she thinks he is sick with interruptitis, and she goes on a journey to cure him
Okay.
because he's sick. And so she goes to her family doctor. This boy is sick. He keeps interrupting me. She goes to the police station saying that he's stealing her words, and the police officer can't do anything about it. She meets all these other people, and then she realizes that through a conversation with her mom, what she really wants to do is stop him and freeze him in time. So, with her superpowers, next time they're in class and he tries to keep guessing her words, she puts out her hand like a stop sign, and it works, and he stops talking, and she's able to finish her sentences. And yeah, that's the main gist of the story.
Oh, wonderful, Kim, wonderful. Now, I recognize and appreciate Kim that that you that you are a studying superhero with children, but I also
Mm-hmm.
believe and feel Kim that that because of your stories that that you can also be considered a superhero for parents. because I'm sure because I mean, reading your stories, listening to you, it must be so refreshing and relieving for parents because parents are often left
Mhm.
out of the equation when supporting people who stutter because they need a lot of support. So,
Yeah.
but what are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, I think the support for parents is really lacking. And it's an area that I would love to see expanded. There's a lot of fear there. And I can even talk to that on a personal note because my daughter started stuttering.
Mm,
And, as a person who stutters, when your child starts stuttering, I felt like I was punched in the gut. She didn't understand at first what was happening, why her word wouldn't come out of her mouth, but I knew exactly what that was. And her stuttering became quite severe fast. And, with both my husband and I being people who stutter, all that fear and that anxiety, I don't know if it was worse for us because we knew we had that empathy but like when I have parents who are sitting in front of me and they're in tears and they're just so scared for their kid, or they're talking about their child being bullied at school, I get it. Like I'm 100% there. And speech therapy did work for my daughter. But that's not often. That's not a common story. And there's a lot of guilt and a lot of, shame for parents. I remember being at a stuttering event and I invited my parents to come. And the SLP said to the adults in the group, if you were a kid and if you could say one thing to parents, what would you say? And I would say to the parents, it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. And I didn't realize it, but my mom, who was sitting beside me, was just in tears. Like she had carried the weight of feeling the blame for this. And it just was like mass tears. And a lot of children, the whole history of like, you think of autism, you think of everything was blamed on the mother. And I think parents of kids who stutter carry an insurmountable, invisible weight that they never get to talk about. And it's hard to get parents together. It really is. It's hard to get them to open up and to talk about it because I feel like they are just as emotional and in need of support as the person who stutters. So I really encourage parents to attend stuttering conferences. There are other parents that are there too. And, even if your adult child doesn't want to go or your teenage child doesn't want to go, you can go and you can talk to other adults who stutter and go there just for you.
mm,
But yeah, I really encourage parents to or, or reach out to.
mm,
And even though they may be a person who is fluent, they are still 100% part of our stuttering community.
definitely,
And
definitely.
when I get parents that are like 100% focused on fluency and my kid needs to be fluent, I just approach this person with a complete open heart because I know behind that is that they love their kids so much and they are so scared.
Mm. Kim,
Yeah.
what supports do you feel that 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 students who stutter need in the education system? there's a lot of supports. I mean, there's a lot of awareness in sports for autism, Down syndrome, which is wonderful. But we find, and I'm talking about, I mean, the work the Newfoundland Labrador Stuttering Association is trying to do is we're trying to get stuttering to be under the lens within the school system. There needs to be more recognition and support. What's your thoughts?
Absolutely. Yeah, unless the children who stutter have another disability, they don't get speech therapies as support. And the support that they need in schools is really an advocate. They need someone to advocate on their behalf and to teach what stuttering is to teachers, because teachers are not aware about stuttering any more than anyone else. And as a kid, I would sometimes read out the wrong answer, fully knowing that it was wrong. But that was the only word that I was going to be able to get out of my mouth. And so when teachers design assessments and oral presentations, and these presentations are timed. Like the amount of human rights discrimination that is happening to kids who stutter in schools is staggering, and nobody knows. And kids are getting assessed on their stuttering and not on their content and the knowledge that they have. Um, there just needs to be a lot of advocacy happening, and teachers don't know how to necessarily handle things. So like one teacher asked me, they said that they had a child who stutters, there was an incident at lunch, and she felt that what was happening was very unjust, and she wanted to tell her side of the story. And of course, as she's talking, her stuttering is just increasing more and more and more, and kids are trying to interrupt her to get into their side of the story, and their stuttering's just increasing, and the teacher's like, this is going on and on and on. She's like, I have math, I need to be teaching math. She's like, I didn't know how to handle it. Like, what should I have done? And I said to her, well, you really needed to separate the kid who stutters and go out in the hallway with her, so she didn't feel that she would have people jumping on her talking, and that she felt that she had enough time in the world to say what she needed to say. And teachers just don't know that, and they don't know that when they go up and down the rows of reading, how stressful that be, or the games that they play in math class where they're like, I'm going to throw you a ball and you have to say the answer before you catch it two times three, and the kids like, you gotta respond with time pressure. um, there's a lot of stuff that they just don't know. And a lot of stuff about children's rights that parents, unless they're educated about that, they don't know either. So there's a lot of awareness that needs to happen.
Hmm. Kim, what do do you want to say to the SLPs in general? What advice for SLPs in schools or private? What would you want to say to them at this point? I mean, to offer
I
support for
would
them.
say to them, right. I would say and encourage them to get people talking. If you've got a bunch of kids who you have as clients, offer them an opportunity all to meet. Same as the parents. Really encourage them to reach out and contact the stuttering community, and also for your own professional development, to reach out to other SLPs who also work in the field and get support. Because it can be a stressful job. You've got a lot of parents that are desperate for you to make their child fluent. And that's a lot of weight and a lot of education that they need to be doing, for parents. So I just think like we all shouldn't be needing to suffer on our own. And I really encourage for other people who stutter to get together, and other SLPs to become involved in the stuttering community.
Mm. Kim, how do you come up with your themes for your stories? Does the
A,
SLPs give you parents? You know.
a lot of them come up with my own experience. So, book number 2 was about Melissa meeting her family, and that was based off of my own story of meeting other people who stutter, and the desire to not feel alone and connecting with others. My book number 3, um, was about eye contact. And sorry, there's a lot of noise happening outside my window right now. I don't know if you can hear that
Oh
or
yeah,
not.
I can hear that.
But
Yeah, but that's fine. No, don't worry about
yeah, just perfect timing.
it.
um, and I use eye contact a lot, and I use it as a tool. So that was the book that I wrote on that. And my book number 4, that's free on my website that anybody can download, was about the fear of confronting phone calls when COVID hit and everything shut down. And oh
Yeah,
gosh, and
that's okay. That's okay. Good.
sorry,
You
when
know,
COVID hit, yeah.
is something something being dismantled outside of your wall or something.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like that. Okay, the garbage truck is leaving.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
So, so book number 4 was, when COVID hit and everything shut down, everybody was suddenly on Zoom. It was how to use facing the phone call that, this Melissa was now having to call her friends instead of seeing them in person. And she had to overcome some fear of the phone.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so just a lot of it comes from me, actually.
Yeah. So, Kim, are your books being being used used as part of the curriculum in schools now? Is it like a course, or what would you like to see your how would you like to see your books used in schools? Because it's obvious that they're really an invaluable resource.
Yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of SLPs who are purchasing the books, and some teachers. So that's awesome. It takes so much advocacy. And when I was at the beginning, when I was trying to get them into classrooms and libraries, they didn't understand why this was important. And they really were fearful of starting conversations that they didn't know how to lead or how to discuss. So there's still a lot of hesitancy, for people who are not comfortable with inclusion and diversity or disability, to be having these conversations. But I was invited to a school and I read the book to all of the grades. And it was interesting because the class would come in and I would start talking, and some of them would avoid eye contact with me, or they would snicker, or they would look at their friends thinking, why is she talking like that? Um, and then I would read my book and open up the floor for anybody to ask me anything. And hands were up and eye contact was being made. And I was talking to these kids about stuttering. And the transformation of these kids coming in, and 20 minutes later, it was incredible. And there really is a lot of opportunity that when we start reading books from authors who are disabled or have a diverse experiences, that when you introduce these books to children, they're just like little sponges. They soak everything up and they totally get it. And it's really a missed opportunity to not have these books exposed and in classrooms. But I'm not going to lie to you, it's a struggle. It is an uphill struggle with book publishers, with classroom teachers, with a lot of people, with public libraries. So they tell me, well, we're very short on book space. And if your library book isn't taken out enough times, then it gets tossed.
Oh my God.
So it has to be popular. So it's not like even if that it's a valid topic and it's like there's no other children's book on stuttering. Can you at least leave one? Nope. If it's
It's
not taken
frustrating,
out
I'm
at a
sure.
certain and it's like,
Uh,
well, it's not for the masses. Well, actually, it is for the masses. The masses are the ones who should be reading these books, but it's hard.
mm.
Yeah.
Kim, have like have have, have, have you thought about expanding your writing for like adolescents and adults? Have you thought about that?
Um, I did at one point, um, but uh, I'd have to say my interest in writing right now has shifted. So right now, I'm a full-time student in criminology, and I'm starting down a different path, but somewhat the same. I've got a website called Speaking Up BC, and it's really about education advocacy for kids with disabilities or diverse needs. And so stuttering is definitely in that. And I did a workshop specifically on how to advocate for kids who stutter in education. And I did that at the last CSA conference. But right now, I do not have time to be writing books for teens or adults.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, I mean that's definitely something that could happen in the future. I'm certainly not going to say no to that. I do really enjoy writing, and I blog a lot, and but I'm writing term papers right now, so that's what my content is going into.
So,
Yeah.
Kim, Kim, what made made you to explore criminology now?
So it was in an interesting path. So I'm actually representing my daughter in a human rights
Okay.
complaint. And so on her behalf, for the last almost 3 years now, I've been in quite a battle, or that's what it feels like. And the advocacy that I've been doing on behalf of both of my children, who are both and and neurodiverse and have various disabilities, the advocacy on behalf of them in the school system has really kind of flipped the switch. I mean, I've always been an advocate at heart, and my degree in human systems has just been perfect for this. And so I've always kind of had it in me that justice and law has always been there. And going through this experience just kind of sparked it again. And I decided that I really wanted to go back to school and turn this into a profession.
Mm. Kim, you are an overt, person who stutters, and it's obvious that that you're on the phone a lot. How do you handle somebody, a listener on the phone that has that they that you sense may be this disrespectful? How do you handle something like that? Somebody may be impatient or
Um, well, so the experiences that may happen on the phone or in person. So there's, and this kind of comes back to my advocacy philosophy. I haven't really gotten anything too horrible on the phone. Like some people talk to me like I'm a small child or a baby, and they say, "Don't worry, sweetie, we're gonna get through this as as together." Or some people will say, "I think your internet is bad, or your cell phone is bad because you're cutting out." I'm like, "No, I just stutter. It's me. It's not my cell phone."
I know.
Um, but I mean that there are some people that I've a long history, especially when I was younger. It's kind of um, it's kind of lessened gotten as I've aged. I don't know if that's an age thing, but I've had so many people imitate me. I don't know what it is, but I don't know if it's they're like confused about what I'm doing or what's going on. But a lot of people will just copy me, and and here's my perspective on dealing with anybody. So I could walk into one room and I could meet someone who knows a lot about stuttering. And they could look at me and think, "Wow, you are fabulous." And then I could literally walk down the hall into another room and meet someone who has zero knowledge on stuttering. And they could think I have emotional problems. I'm not capable, blah, blah, blah. And then there's everybody in between. No matter how anybody reacts to me, whether it's positive or a negative, they're not teaching me anything new about me. They're really just showing me who they are as people and how much knowledge they and how much exposure or experience they have with stuttering. So I no longer take any kind of a negativity personally because it literally has nothing to do with me. It's all about them.
Mhm.
So when people are, when they imitate me or when they respond in a way that used to feel like I was being punched in the gut, I'm very patient with them. I just wait for them to be done with whatever they're saying. Depends on what they do. I will completely ignore them and give them a look of like, "Are you done now?" And it's those micro expressions that they pick up on and will shut up. and then I and then I make eye contact with them. I'm very confident, and I just keep on talking. And I will talk and talk and talk, and I don't leave them alone. And now these people have become my new best friend because I'm not going away.
Excellent,
You've
excellent.
now told me, yeah, you've now told me that you have such little exposure to stuttering, and I need to increase that exposure for you. So, and really, like, I don't feel like it's advantageous for me or the stuttering community if I come off as like angry or rude or disrespectful to them. I really want to model um, that you may be completely ignorant or you may lack information. It doesn't mean that you don't have a good heart. It just means that you just don't know. And I'm willing to spend time to teach you. And a lot of things is that I don't feel like I need to tell somebody that I have every right to participate fully in life just like everybody else. I don't necessarily need to say that, but I certainly show it. And
Mm-hmm.
I show up and I participate. And it's by a modeling confidence. I don't get when you are confident, your chances of getting a negative feedback as a way to demean you happens a lot less. And the negativity is more based off of just lack of a lack of knowledge. And
Mm.
that's okay because I will teach you.
Yeah. Well, Kim, th- uh, thank you very much for uh, t- taking the time to have this conversation with uh, with me and and our listeners today, Kim. And you're definitely a role model for the stuttering community. So thank you very much, Kim.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I hope I give back as much as what the stuttering community has given me. And I just really appreciate all the work that you are also doing and the time that you invest into advocacy and allowing us to share our stories.
Thank you.
Some Stutterla is hosted by Greg O'Grady. It is produced, recorded, and edited by Paul De Decker, as well as Luca Dinu, who, by the way, wrote this jazzy theme music. Leah Bugden and Alicia Megison command our pages on Instagram and TikTok. Editing assistance was provided by the Labrador Languages Preservation Laboratory, or Labradory, at the Memorial University of Newfoundland. You can listen to or subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and Spotify. Video versions of each episode are found on our YouTube page. Some Stutterla is a production of the Communication Collaborative. Thanks for listening.